It has been a fortnight since the three chiefs were together, and what a 2-week span we have had. Let's dive right into the Isobar and take a look at the literal highs and lows of meteorology. I am joined by Emily Walls, chief meteorologist down the road in Chicago, Rich Luderman, chief meteorologist over in Detroit, and my name is Rob Haswell, chief meteorologist here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. All three of us have been riding this weather roller coaster the past couple of weeks. It's spring. It's not spring. It's winter. It's not winter. We've been all over the map. Let's start over in Detroit, Rich. What's the last couple of weeks been like for you?
Well, last week we had 5 days in a row of 50-degree or better temperatures. So all the snow that we had, through December and January, it's mostly gone. In fact, one day we hit 65 degrees last week. So, people were so happy. People were so excited. There was even some sunshine. When you have sunshine in 50 in February, people are just,
And by people, you mean you in your backyard, right?
I loved it. I was out there picking up sticks in my backyard, and, in the back of my mind, I know it's a little early. And I don't know how many times I went on our nightly news and said, we're not done with snow. We're not done with cold. We're not done with wintry weather. So even though we got this great stretch going, reality is going to come back. And it has. It's cold again, but in perspective, you look at all the craziness they've had out east the last couple days, and we have nothing to complain about.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that in a few minutes here because that's a huge story, weather-wise, obviously. But the roller coaster has been going for you down the road in Chicago as well, Emily.
Yeah, that's right. But it's a roller coaster that I think a lot of us are kind of okay with being on because it was so nice for so long. And all we did in January was talk about how cold it was, right? And then we finally saw this beautiful warm up in February. So once we made it into about the second week of February, that's when everything changed. We went from cold to very warm conditions here in the Chicago area. We actually had 12 days in a row where we were experiencing above average temperatures. We had one day that we had a record warm temperature of 65 degrees, and the previous record was right around 58 degrees. So it was, we beat that record by a long shot. For the date, I believe it was the 16th of February that we hit that. So it was very warm, but all good things must come to an end. And we have been adjusting and we have been, trying to deal with it. But, after the warm air moved out of here, we actually got hit with some snow over the weekend. And, that was an adjustment to say the least. I think a lot of us forgot what it felt like, and we had high temperatures that were actually in the upper 20s to near 30 degrees. So it wasn't that bad, right? That's not terrible. If anything, if you think back to a month ago, we would have been praying for days that were in the upper 20s to near 30 degrees. So
exactly. But when it comes after hitting record warms, it's a little tough. And the lake effect, particularly in the Northwest Indiana area of your broadcast region, absolutely hammered with lake effect.
Yeah, that's right. And something that we have to think about too is all of the lake ice that we've had that developed during the month of January. A lot of that has certainly melted closer to the coastlines here down on our neck of the woods. So, that gives you a little more steam when it comes to lake effect. You have a little more fetch, if you will, over the lake. So yeah, we had several inches piling up over parts of Northwest Indiana. And fortunately, it came at, I guess if I had to choose whether it was a convenient or inconvenient time, I would say that it's a little more convenient because it came over a weekend when a lot of folks, weren't making their normal morning commutes. But for folks that were traveling for weekend plans, obviously it's always impactful. But yeah, we're not done with that lake effect just yet. It's only February. And I think after having that stretch of, 12 days here in our neck of the woods, it was, we had false hope.
Yeah, they call it false winter around here, right? Or fake spring or whatever it is, right? Because it gives you this false sense of hope. But we went on the same roller coaster. We broke a record, and not just by a little. It was a long-standing 105-year plus record. I think the previous record was 56. We did 64. So just smashed the record here in Milwaukee. We went from several inches of snow cover down to zero in just a very few days. And of course, as you guys know, that changes everything. Once you get rid of that snow cover and you get rid of the reflective abilities of that bright white snow, all of a sudden that sun, which is now at a nice high angle in the sky, or at least a higher angle in the sky, does so much more work and warms us up so much more efficiently. So yeah, we're on this real streak here. And even when it broke, you're right, Emily, like the cold that came after the warm up, we would have loved a day like that in mid to late January, but it was still kind of a reminder that, yeah, it is still technically winter.
Right.
We also went from a real big pattern shift here to we were on like the Clipper parade. It was like one Clipper after the next forever and forever and forever. And then we actually had like a nice long dry stretch. And I say nice as far as like getting rid of the nuisance snow, because at one point there, it had snowed at least something, trace or slightly measurable snows, almost every day for 2 weeks straight. So it was like a routine: get up, brush off the car, clear the walk, get up, brush off the car, clear the walk. It was so repetitive. And then all of a sudden, we just completely dried up, and it was almost like people didn't know what to do with themselves. Now, I did caution them: do not remove the snow brush from your car. Don't put the snow shovel away. Do not jinx this stretch. And of course, somebody must have, because we're back at it. But I'll shift.
You know what's interesting, Rob, Emily? It seems like in an average winter, at some point we do get a thaw in there. Sometimes the thaw comes, close to New Year's or in January. This year it came in mid to late February, but it's nice when it happens. And it seems like most winters we get a bona fide thaw. But then again, in most winters, we'll have some of those wintry events well into late March and early April. So we're not done with it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I always joke. People jokingly say, "When's our last snow?" That was asked. It's like a favorite thing this time of year when they see me out at Menards or something, and I'll just jokingly say June. Like, 'cause you can't be sure. Even June, depending on which part of the month, you can't be sure. So we're not done with winter just yet, although we're going to talk about meteorological spring coming up in just a bit. I also want to take a little bit of time here off the top to talk about some of the severe weather. It was spring-like in that way, too, as there was some pretty significant severe weather, particularly down the road, a little farther south of you, but in Illinois.
Yeah, that's right. So downstate Illinois was dealing with several tornadoes when we were kind of going from that switch from the warm weather over to the cold weather again. Was when we had those storms coming through. Now, fortunately, in the Chicagoland area, I stayed here all night waiting for those storms, and watching them, keeping a close eye on them. But fortunately, they were just south of the Fox 32 viewing area. So we got lucky there. We did have a couple heavier thunderstorms come through with heavy downpours. There was some hail that we had as well, some wind producers, but nothing that actually ended up meeting severe criteria here in the Chicagoland area. So all of it fortunately did stay south. But yes, there were a couple tornadoes that were confirmed that did touch down farther downstate. And of course, those tracked right on into central Indiana as well. So there was some pretty serious stuff taking place south of us as we went from that transition from warm to cold.
Did you get anything severe, Rich?
We had some warnings the one day, and it was hail that was the main threat. We don't get a lot of hail in southern Michigan. Obviously with the big severe storms, June, July, we'll get some hail. But what's interesting is at my house, on 2 consecutive days, I had hail, and the first time it happened, my driveway was coated with hail. I mean, it was only pea-sized. It was little hail, but the fact is we don't get much year-round, and here it is twice in February. We had grapple and hail, and I was trying to explain the grapple thing, and, it's very interesting. We did not have severe weather, which is good, but quite a few hail reports on back-to-back days. For February, that's a little unusual.
Yeah, for sure. It is a little out of the ordinary. I mean, all of our regions can have severe weather this time of year. It definitely has happened. We didn't have anything severe in the Milwaukee metro areas. We had a few rumbles of thunder, some small hail like you did, Rich, as well. We also had some pretty good heavy rain, and that kind of segues into the it could be worse category, because the rain that fell in our area was dirty. I had so many people emailing me the day after the rain. They're like, my car's dirty. And I'm like, well, all the salt from the roads. They're like, no, there's dirt on it from the rain. And so obviously a couple of little clicks here and there and investigated. And a lot of folks were dealing with this dirty rain from the grass fires into the southern and central plains states. It's just proves how well connected we are, but like unbelievable how far reaching that was.
Yeah, it was actually gross, if I can use that
Yeah,
word here.
sure.
So I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's car looked like you had sprayed them with a hose and like dribbled some mud in front of it. And I will say, for as long as I've lived in Chicago, I have never seen the car wash lines as long as they were that week. Because I mean, and I tried for days, and I would just look at the line and I'm like, I don't have time to wait for this. So my car unfortunately was dirty for quite some time. And it was already in a busy stretch because we were finally, after that thaw, we weren't dealing with the snow, so everybody was washing their cars already. The car wash lines, though, were insane because of that. But yes, so many questions associated with the muddy rain. And again, I always say that these are good teaching opportunities because a lot of people will say that they've never seen it before, and like we have, but maybe it wasn't quite as bad because it did look like all of us went driving through some mud fields.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty widespread. Did it make it to Detroit, Rich?
I'll tell you what we had that was very interesting. On the first day that we got up to 50 degrees, we had very light winds, and we had air quality concerns because of all of the stuff that's in the snow. And we had a pretty good snowpack. It was melting slowly. There was no breeze. And so the fine particulate matter went up to like 140, 150, 160. Wow. And we've had that before, but in my 28 years in Detroit, it's only been a handful of times that we've had air quality because of the melting snow and the light winds. It was hazy and cruddy. Very interesting. It's all you said it. It's a wonderful teaching opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. We had similar air quality issues here as well. And again, it was the melting snow, and obviously it was some of that wildfire smoke in the area. So to borrow Emily's point there, it was gross. It was gross. Yeah, it was gross for a couple of days. But it was warm, and that led to the poor, air quality with the melting snow. Also melted a lot of ice. I did a quick Google search, and I think every one of our viewing areas has been reporting on ice rescues of late. Rich, we'll start with you because I know this is one of your things that you watch very closely.
We had a dog rescue just yesterday because somehow a dog got on to an ice floe, and these fishermen in the Detroit River saw the dog, and it was floating downstream. So they made a call, and between the fishermen and the DNR, they successfully rescued the dog. So yeah, the ice is breaking up on Lake St. Clair, on the St. Clair River, the Detroit River, obviously. And it's interesting, the fall off of ice cover in the Great Lakes is significant. A few weeks ago, there was a healthy cover of ice on the entire Great Lakes system. And now we may be falling for the rest of the winter because we're not going to really get that cold, for very much longer. So it's interesting how from season to season, from year to year, how things change. Water levels, the ice cover, air quality. Isn't it all interesting? I think the three of us would agree. It's all very interesting.
Well, if we didn't agree, this podcast wouldn't make much sense. So, but yes, I totally agree. It's fascinating, and particularly at the transitional seasons, right? Spring or fall, winter going into spring, and then fall going into winter. We do get these fascinating, changes of gear. I saw some ice issues as well down the Chicago way, Emily. I know you just finally got the ice in the river that you wanted.
I know. We had that ice in the river for, I swear, it felt like just a couple of days and then it was gone. But it's one of my favorite things to see. But yeah, all of that ice across the Chicago River, it's out of here. If you look at any of our sky cams of the skyline from, out near the planetarium where you kind of like jutted out into the lakefront a little bit, we don't really have a lot of ice on our lakes at all. But the inland lakes, speaking of ice rescues, we had one that took place, I believe it was last week in the northwest suburbs. And unfortunately, it was actually on one of those days that we were in the 60s and there were still people that were out on the lake. And, you try your best to message, that it's not safe. But anytime you have temperatures that are even close to 32 degrees, especially if you have some sun, that ice weakens very, very quickly. And from my understanding, there were shanties that fell in, people themselves that fell in. So yeah, it's that time of the year that I would say if you haven't gotten your shanties off of the lakes yet, just leave them there. Let them become one with the fish at this point.
That's true. Well, that used to be the thing to do back in the day, just let them sink, right? And I know the DNR here in Wisconsin has set dates that you have to pull them off of certain bodies of water. But yeah, we had similar situations here. And unfortunately, it always seems like it's a domino effect. Like Rich was saying, the dog went in and then somebody went in after the
Yeah.
dog. Here it was somebody went in and then the person that tried to rescue that person ended up going in. And then, of course, firefighter, some emergency support, first responders had to get out there and save the day, which they did. And that's wonderful and all. But let's let them focus on other stuff and just stay off the ice. One of the true tragedies, though, of losing this ice had less to do with the warm weather and more to do with a massive storm that came through. Have either one of you ever been up to the Apostle Island ice caves, way up in northwestern
No, I
Wisconsin?
haven't.
No.
I've never been either. I see it every year. I think, I got to go. But it hasn't actually opened for 11 years. It was open for 1 day this season.
Oh, no.
Because we were cold enough, the ice, because you have to walk out on the lake to get to the ice cave. So you can't take a bus out or anything. You have to take a walk. And apparently it's like basically walking a 5K. But anyway, it was perfect. The ice was there. You could go in, you could check it out. It was open for 1 day. Then that really strong clipper came through, if you remember. And it wasn't so much that it was the snow or even any kind of warm up, but the waves it churned up just turned that ice into mush. It just tore it all to pieces. And 24 hours later, you could just see giant chunks of ice floating around in the open water. So that was it. They were open for 1 day and closed the next. It just shows you how, vulnerable and changeable ice conditions can be in even just 24 hours for such a wide variety of reasons. Higher temperatures, strong wind speeds, strong waves. There's just too many variables to take it lightly.
That's
You know
too
what's
bad.
interesting? Oh, I'm sorry, Emily. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's too bad that, so many folks were probably so excited because it had been 11 years and, to have it be a 1 day deal. That's really, that's
Especially
really
since
devastating.
it's like a 5 or 6 hour drive from Milwaukee.
Yeah,
So,
that's terrible.
yeah, I would hate to see it. What were you going to say, Rich?
Yeah, I think we've all seen it, witnessed it, or have seen the videos of these ice shoves. These great ice shoves that happen in and around the Great Lakes, and they're very hard to predict. Because it depends on the wind speed, the wind direction, the amount of ice, blah blah blah. But we'll see if we develop some of these ice shoves, because some of them can be 5, 6, 8, 12 feet high as they move inland. And if you've never seen them, it is something to, maybe look up on YouTube, because there's great video of these ice shoves.
And they do incredible amounts of damage.
There's some spots on the St. Clair River where they used to have ferries that would take, mostly tourists across from the United States to Canada. But there were a couple of years of bad ice and bad ice shoves that it damaged the docks so much, Emily, down in Marine City, that they never rebuilt the docks, because it would have taken an inordinate amount of money to rebuild it. So ice shoves, very Great Lakesy and very interesting.
Great Lakesy. I like that.
I like that. Yeah.
That could be our new subtitle.
Yeah.
The Isobar. Very Great Lakesy. But yeah, you're right. The fascination with ice is, it's obviously something that mankind has been fascinated with for forever. And I'm sure you could do many, many doctoral theses on it. But let's move on a little bit, because something else that's going to be studied in meteorology for years to come is this monster blizzard that just hit the Northeast and is in many ways still impacting the Northeast. The amount of snow out that way is just jaw-dropping.
Yeah, it's incredible. In Providence, Rhode Island, actually, I just saw this morning 37 inches of snow.
Wow.
So, if you're doing the math, that is more than 3 feet of snow that fell. I can't imagine. One, I'd be like a kid in a candy store. I would love it for a day. But I can't imagine taking care and moving that much snow after it falls. So kudos to all of the crews that are hard at work, and they're going to stay hard at work here for days.
Rob, I've only seen big snow, let's say more than 20 inches, only 3 times in my life, witnessed it, been a part of it. It's extraordinary. 8, 10 inches, that's a lot of snow, 12 inches, that's a lot. But when you get up above 20, it's a whole different ball game. And the times when I've witnessed big snow was back in central New York when I lived there. Yeah, thank God, thank goodness, in Detroit, we don't get, over 10 or 12 inches very often. So I'm not missing anything. That's okay by me.
You're not upset by that at all. Yeah,
That's
we're
right.
all happy to not be digging out from all of that mess. My personal story with that kind of level of snow and a big city is back in the 90s in Toronto. Similar situation, monster nor'easter, tracked far enough to the north to really hammer the city of Toronto, which is big city, similar in size to Chicago, maybe similar infrastructure, right? And when you put that kind of snow into major cities like Toronto or Boston or New York or whatever, you can't just shove it out of the way, right? Like these back roads and rural roads of Wisconsin, you get 10, 20, 30 inches worth of snow. All right, you run the plow down the road, push the snow into the ditch, and we wait for it to melt in spring. But they had to call in the armed forces to come in to help out the snow removal crews. You have to pick it up and take it out. All that
Yeah, you
snow
have to truck it out.
Yes, exactly. And then it became, well, where do you put it? If we dump all this stuff into the lake with all that salt and sand and everything that's in there, it's just going to make a pollution nightmare. So you ended up they trucking it out to the country and piling it up in fields. It was a nightmare, not only because of the weather, but because of the fact that big cities, there's just nowhere to put this stuff. So when you think about how this most recent storm hit all these major metropolises, right? Like New York and Rhode Island, and Connecticut and all these major megapolises, they're going to be digging out for days.
It's going to be wild. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I saw, as things were kind of getting rocking and rolling, there were blizzard warnings that extended essentially all the way from Virginia up to Maine. So, it was a huge, huge stretch of that I-95 corridor. So, as you mentioned, Rob, just so many big cities along that route
Right.
that, they're dealing with it today and they will be for a while.
And some of the wind
on
speed.
top of, I was going to say, Rob, that's exactly right. On top of the snow and the infrastructure crisis, you got power outages because of the winds. It's catastrophic.
Right.
It's not going to, go on for weeks and months of a cleanup, but in the near term, there's places that are really hurting right now. And, with kids and hospitals and ambulances and I hate to say it, but I'm glad it's not in Detroit. I'm glad it's not in Chicago or Milwaukee.
Right. Definitely in our could be worse file because, by comparison, we are doing very well here in our three major cities. But yeah, hearts and minds going out to those folks that are digging out from under, and we'll be continuing to watch that story, obviously. Now, while that was happening, it was just kind of an interesting meteorological coincidence because they're not connected. But we had this major snowstorm that, was in near hurricane wind speeds in many cases. And then on the other side of the planet was 2026's first Category 5 tropical cyclone. Now, fortunately, it was out in the open waters of the Indian Ocean, but fascinating to have two monster storms on opposite sides of the planet at the same time.
I hope it's not an omen for the year ahead. My
No
goodness.
doubt.
Yeah.
Because these Cat 5s are, obviously monsters. This one, didn't hurt anybody, but at the same time, it's just, you're right, it could be an omen, Emily.
Well, let's just hope not.
Let's hope not. I'm just saying, I think you're right. That's the same vibe I got.
We deserve an easy year here.
that would be nice.
Mother Nature throws constant curveballs, not just to the Great Lakes, but, out west, that terrible story about the avalanche in California and the historic snows out there. And then it wasn't that long ago when they had the wind and the waves up in Alaska, with the evacuations that took place. It's a lot. It's a lot keeping track of all the curveballs.
Right, and it has become, somewhat more amplified over the recent decades, and so it's giving us, a little bit more of a, a run for our money, if you will.
Yes.
One last thing in this, it could be worst category. You brought up the avalanche. That's obviously a tragic, tragic story. And then poor California, it just can't catch a break. It's just constantly rain and flooding there. And there seems to be all the rain in places that don't need any more and nothing in places that they need it.
Yeah, and every time we're going into spring, summer, of course, we have that rainy season that's in California as well. But, as you mentioned, it's always so unfortunate when you see all of this water in places that don't necessarily need it, and then the places that are so starved for it, the drought conditions could just like get worse or continue going into the summertime and the drier months. So it's really going to be something to watch. But unfortunately, in the meantime, all of the flooding, all of the rain, it doesn't seem to be letting up anytime soon.
No. And yeah, you have a snow drought and a flood in the exact same, geographical location, basically, within a few 100 miles of each other.
Yeah.
It's kind of fascinating. Rich, are you a skier at all?
In my younger days, when I lived in central New York State, I did enjoy skiing up at Lake Placid, at Gore Mountain, up in Vermont. But that was tales of my youth. Now, as I'm getting a bit older, I'm happy just picking up sticks in my backyard.
Well, there you go. But yeah, I mean, I just thought of that because, again, it's talking about having too much of one thing in the wrong place and then not enough in the other. The ski industry in that part, Lake Tahoe in particular, really hit hard by this snow drought. And then, of course, the tourism is hit for that. And then down the road, there's not the snow to end up feeding to work against the drought in the coming months ahead. So you've got this, never-ending cycle. So, we really feel for the folks on both coasts right now. We're kind of sitting pretty here in the middle, even with the roller coaster ride we've been on. All right, with that, though, let's move forward and look ahead to spring. I was just checking the Climate Prediction Center's outlook for the next 3 months, which will take us into meteorological spring for March, April, and May. All of our regions, Milwaukee, Chicago, Detroit, look to be pretty much par for the course, seasonal when it comes to temperatures, but above average precipitation, which could be a pretty good thing. Because last time I checked the drought monitor, guys, most of our states could use a little more rain going into spring before the growing season.
Yeah, in the Chicago area, we've actually seen quite a bit of improvements over the last couple months in winter, but immediately outside of Chicagoland, I mean, the drought is still really, really bad. Down central Illinois, central Indiana, downstate areas could really use the water. So it's a good thing that I like the outlook that we have for potentially seeing above average conditions. And, drought always seems to sneak up on us, and it happens so fast. It can happen so quickly. So anything that we can bank in the meantime, I think we can be pretty happy about it.
Rob, same in Michigan. Our drought monitor indicates we're dry, and it's even drier in northern Ohio. So that stretch from like Toledo out to where the Ohio Turnpike runs into Indiana, exceptionally dry. Way up there on the scale. So, yeah, you said it, Emily. It's good to get some, even if it's a little more than we should, to bank it, because usually at some point in the summer, we start to dry out. That's usually the case.
Yeah, we kind of want to bank that soil moisture ahead of time, even in the winter months, which is why I typically still check the drought monitor, even though we're not, in the growing season. Particularly as we get to February and March, we want to start to see that kind of get a little wetter than needed so that we've got something to work with in the days ahead. So it does look good. Climate Prediction Center outlook for March, April, and May does have most of our region getting above average precip and average temperatures. So hopefully most of that comes down as rain. Speaking of spring, almost time to adjust those clocks again. Feels like just yesterday we were talking about falling back. Now we're springing forward on the 8th of March already.
This is the one I don't like,
Yeah, right?
This is the one that I don't look forward to. Makes you a little sleepy for about a week and a half. Yeah, but you know what? You mentioned it, meteorological spring. And if that's what we have to do to get into the spring season, we will do it.
There you go. And this is last time we chatted, we were all jealous because Rich is on the western side of his time zone, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, that hour of springing forward, it doesn't sound like much, but you said it, Emily, like it takes sometimes 3, 4, 5 days to get it through your system. And I love the fall back deal, but the spring forward is much more difficult. It is.
Especially with kids. And Emily, you've got the young kids. They don't care what the clock says. Yeah,
they don't care at all. In fact, I think regardless, her wake up time just keeps getting earlier and earlier and earlier. So yes, time changes are not our friend when you have young kiddos.
Yeah, that's right. All of my kiddos are adults technically now, as of a couple of weeks ago when my youngest turned 18. So they won't feel it nearly as much. But Emily, you will definitely have to adjust, maybe
Yeah.
shift the bedtimes a little bit. That's what they say.
Yeah.
I never really did it. I'm not, that conscientious of a parent, I guess. I don't know. But the advice is always like, oh, just slowly change their bedtime so they won't even notice it. But I'm like, yeah, good luck. If I can get my kid to bed, that's a win.
That's the win. That is the win in itself.
I'm not too worried about 15 minutes one way or the other, but that is coming up on the 8th. And I thought we would end on kind of a fun note here because with spring coming, everybody's excited about what they're going to do in spring. Maybe just go around the horn. And what excites you about spring in Detroit, Rich?
Well, I put my mulch in early. So I normally I know that sounds sad. Like here's a guy who gets excited about putting mulch in. But usually I'm
Rich is
like
picking up sticks and putting in mulch.
I like picking up sticks, but usually at the end of March, we'll get like a nice day and I'll call my mulch guy and I'll just say, bring 5 or 6 yards. And I get a couple of helpers and we just get to it and put the mulch on the flower beds. I like to get that done in late March. There you go.
Okay, so I agree with you. Landscaping is nice. It gives it that like feel that your yard is something you can use again, right?
That's right.
Not
That's
just
right.
somewhere the dog does its business like mine. Emily, what's spring in Chicago mean to you?
Well, a lot of us no longer have those yards to tend to when we live in the city.
That's true.
So for me, it's not about landscaping and getting ready for it. But my favorite, the most beautiful time of the year, I think, is actually spring in Chicago because Michigan Avenue is already iconic all on its own, but it's lined with tulips and it's the most beautiful scene. Both sides of the street, just lined with thousands of tulips. It's amazing.
There you go. Well, I would say for me in Milwaukee, after being here for 20 years, the springtime means that we get to go back to using some of the incredible natural resources that we have around here. Our beautiful rivers, our gorgeous lake. They're fascinating in the winter too. And we just went through all the stuff about ice, right? But getting down to Bradford Beach in Milwaukee or, taking a boat out on the river downtown or, heading up to Door County or down to Lake Geneva and actually being able to be outside without your face hurting and to just kind of sit and enjoy the ambiance. That's what spring is for me. And that'll be more like April, May than March, April, but still it's coming and I'm excited to do it. Plus, you guys probably know Milwaukee loves a good festival. So by about April or so, they start up, and we'll be having 2 or 3 festivals a week all through the summer. So always something to do. And I hope you guys check the Summerfest list because I think you guys should come up for a concert.
Will do.
Right.
We'll make that happen.
Yeah, Rich, you look like a jelly roll kind of guy.
Woo, man. Let me tell you, my motto in life is I'll try anything 10 or 20 times.
10 or 20 times.
All right, well, thank you both again for taking some time out of your day to join me here and to create the Isobar, the highs and lows of meteorology.